Hello, this is going to be a two-part series of how to set up a Minecraft server on Debian 9 server operating system. There's not going to be a desktop environment, so there will be terminal commands. Using a desktop environment will use up resources which you could use for the Minecraft server instead. For a Minecraft server, you'll want a fast processor, multi-core, and RAM, but you don't need a graphics card really, because it's just processing and not really displaying anything on the server itself. So that's just one thing about the Minecraft server that you might want to keep in mind. You just don't have to worry about a graphics card. And I'm using a desktop computer, and I'll use a virtual machine to demonstrate this, because I try to set up a tripod and a camera and set up on an actual server, the computer I use for a server, and it wasn't detailed enough resolution from the camera to display the writing on the screen. So I had to do it again on VirtualBox. But the procedure will be the same primarily, or for the most part it'll be the same, except once you get into specifics like transferring files and stuff like that. But I'll show you how to deal with transferring files to the actual server that I use and not to the virtual machine. Okay, so I'll start now. Okay, so we'll start this. And there it goes. We'll put that up there. And we'll do the install. And I forgot, gotta use the keyboard. Install. So it's gonna think. There it goes. I just expanded it to the size I wanted and changed its mind. Can you believe these? Okay, so I'll change that again. Now, this is the typical stuff when installing Linux. The language you want, the region you want, the key map, what kind of keyboard you use. Use the arrow keys to select one if it's not English. So now it's loading stuff for basically firmware for the hardware and stuff like that to run the installation. With Debian, if you have an Ethernet cable connected to the computer, which you should have for a server, then it's a lot easier. With wireless adapters, you need to have non-free firmware, which is a problem for Debian because it's all about open source. And some wireless adapters will work with Debian without proprietary software, some of it won't. And you want a Ethernet cable anyway, because wireless adapters aren't as reliable, at least not with the wireless end that I have. They'll drop packets and stuff like that, whereas an Ethernet cable is going to be a more stable connection and not drop as many packets. So effective, even though it's theoretically slower, Ethernet cable in reality, at least in my house, is faster. So, host name. Normally, I would name this just something so that I can recognize it when I go over the router, so I know what it is. So since it's in a virtual machine, I'll do VirtualBox, and then Debian 9, and then Minecraft, and tab, continue. Domain, I don't have a domain. Okay, root password. Root is the administrative profile, so it should be something that you'll remember. I think I put an extra letter in there, and if you want to show the password, like if you're not sure you did it right, just press the space key, tab over to that, press the space key, or not. And then double check to verify the user. And that's fine. And then password for the user. What Debian does is there's the admin profile, root, and then there's this regular user, which you can set up to have some administrative privileges through sudo. Okay, I'm in the central time zone. And now, let's see what it's doing now. Okay, I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to use the entire disk, which is a virtual disk file. But on a server, yeah, probably would want to use the entire disk unless you're using it part-time as a server and dual booting into something that you can use the rest of the time. But typically you'd want the server up all the time. So, guided, use the entire disk. There it is. I only have 10 gigabytes allocated to this. And all files in one partition. That makes it easier. You could make multiple partitions for security, but it's going to be more technical. This is just checking and make sure that's everything that I want. And it's asking again. And now it's installing. And I think this might take a while, so I'll have to come back. Okay, so now it has an option. It has an input that needs. It's named the installation disk, which in this case is a net installation for 64-bit Debian 9. Difference between net installation and a full live CD or whatever is that net installation is just the bare basics. It can sometimes be put on a CD instead of a DVD because it's just the bare files that needs to start installing, and then it pulls the rest of it off the internet. So you need an internet connection for the net installation. If you don't have a good internet connection, then you would want a different disk. And this is the name that's going to be on the, I can't get the cursor there. It's going to be the name that it's going to be in the sources list. So you can, you'll see that again. And then if you want to scan another CD, it's giving you a choice. I don't want to scan anything else. So I'll select this. Oops, I selected the wrong thing. So, new. And fortunately I got out of that without too much confusion. I selected the wrong thing instead of, I should have said no instead of yes. And now it's asking for the packages, or the repository for the packages. This basically is where it's going to download the updates and the packages that it needs. And so you just select the closest country or the country that you're in, and then the mirror that you like. I usually use this one. And then if you have a proxy, then you would put the information in here so it can connect to the internet, but I don't have a proxy, so I'll just leave that blank. Okay, it's asking for input again while it's setting up the software, the system, and what it's asking you is if it can check every week to see what packages you have installed and used a lot. Now, on a regular desktop I usually say no because privacy, but in a server I don't really care. So I'll get back into this box and say yes, help them out a little bit. Now while that's running, oh, here it is. This is where you would install the desktop environment if you're going to use one. I'm not. But I don't need a web server either. Don't need a print server. So press space. SSH server, a secure shell server. That's useful because if you want to transfer files back and forth between the server computer and another computer, that's an easy way to do it. And standard system, sure. Okay. And now it's going to pull the software it needs to set it up this way. So and the input, it's asking if where it should install the grub bootloader. Since it's the only operating system on the computer, then install it to the master boot record. But it gives a warning if there's another operating system that is present on your computer, then you won't be able to get into that unless you manually configure it. So if it found another operating system, then it would account for that, and there's no other one, so that's why it's like this. And then easier would be to do it this way, have it automatically enter the hard drive. There it goes. Ejected the installation disk, and it's ready to reboot. Close, please. Now I'm having technical difficulties with my CD-ROM, but it's fine. Okay, so continue. Rebooting. That's the grub, basically where you choose the operating system or recovery or whatever, depending on whether you have other operating systems or not on the computer. And there you go. The server itself is installed. And log in as root. Keep forgetting that stuff. So now we're logged in as root, the admin. We could do a lot of things. Some of them could mess up the computer. So what we'll do is update the list so that it knows what to look for. all packages are up to date. If there were packages to upgrade, then you do apt upgrade. Now we'll install sudo. And I did it wrong, sorry. apt install sudo. So it's installing that now. While it's doing that, let's see. On a regular computer, bare metal installation, you could switch between terminals by going Control Alt F1. And it doesn't work in a virtual machine. I was checking, but it doesn't work in this, so you're stuck with one terminal in a virtual machine. So now we need to check the groups I'm in. That's the groups I'm in. I want to add myself to the sudo. And to do that, let's see if I wrote down. Yes, I did, because I always forget. I want to add myself, so the user mod minus a capital G sudo. That's the group that I want to add to my groups. That I'm basically permissions that I'm able to do, and then username. And now I have sudo. And I don't have to log in as root and cause as much damage anymore. Okay, so I will exit, log in as myself, and just to test it, and it recognizes the command. Oops, and I started putting the wrong password in. And it works. Another good thing to have is a firewall. Some people say that firewall is unnecessary in Linux because ports are closed anyway by default. A firewall will have to be opened, or the ports will have to be open for SSH and Minecraft, but it's an extra layer of security. So sudo apt install ufw. You don't have to do this step either, it's something that I do. For documentation, there's plenty of it on the internet, especially at the Ubuntu site. So you would do sudo ufw status. It's going to tell me it's not active, but I'm just showing inactive. So you do, that's if you ever want to see what the status is. Enable to turn it on. And then to allow the ports, for some reason I remember the ports that are needed. For SSH, secure shell, to transfer in between the computer and another computer. So you don't have to log in with a command line on the server and deal with that stuff, is 22. And then for Minecraft, the server itself will always be 25.565, at least in Minecraft 1.12 and earlier. It's 25.565 as far as I know. And it might change in the future, who knows. Or you could change it manually in the settings, but I'm not going to do that. And there we go. Firewall is now set up for secure shell and for Minecraft and nothing else, except for updating, of course. Okay. We want to make sure that secure shell is installed. I told it to install during the installation, but we should make sure, especially if you're doing Ubuntu instead of Ubuntu server instead of Debian, it might not give you that choice. Let's see if it's installed. Open SSH-server. Sudo apt install open SSH-server. Let's see. It's already the newest version, so it's installed. And now that looks like it's it. Now it's ready to set up for Minecraft.